everyone, I'm Denise, and since it's October, I thought it was time to do some fall baking. So today we're going to be making pumpkin cookies with a little cream cheese frosting and some pumpkin muffins. So I'm really excited. I'm going to bake these to bring to church tonight. I've got my tea with me, so this can be a cozy baking time. So let's go ahead and hop in. So the first thing we're starting with making are these pumpkin cookies. And I got all the ingredients from Dollar Tree. I found this pumpkin cookie mix that only requires 2 ingredients, 3 tablespoons of butter and 1 tablespoon of water. And then I also picked up a little jar of cream cheese frosting. I also found this at Dollar Tree. And this will be the perfect amount to ice our cookies. It's 10 ounces. And it says actually on the pumpkin cookie mix that these two go well together. Making these are really easy. All you have to do is mix the cookie mix with your other 2 ingredients. I didn't have any butter, so I decided to use oil instead. And when I looked online, it said to use 3/4 the amount of oil for the amount of butter that you would be using. But I found that my cookies turned out a little dry, so I would actually use the full amount of oil instead of the 2 tablespoons and 1 teaspoon that I ended up using. And then you're just going to drop these by rounded teaspoonfuls onto an ungreased cookie sheet. I got about 13 cookies out of this mix. It is kind of a small mix, and I made the cookies extra small because I wanted them to go further so people could just have a little bite. But you can also make them larger to get nicer sized cookies out of this mix. After the cookies were done, I put them in the oven for 12 minutes per the package instructions. Mine turned out a little dry, as I said, so I think because I made mine so small, I could have done them a little bit less time, but they ended up being okay. Next up, I'm just frosting them with this cream cheese icing. I really enjoyed this frosting. I thought it was really good and it complements the cookies really well. So I'm just adding a good amount to each of these cookies. And I learned a hack for nice looking icing on cookies from one of my favorite creators here on YouTube, Dollar Tree Dinners. She's great, by the way. You should go check out her channel if you haven't watched her. But she uses wax paper to press down on top of the cookies, and then you just put these in the freezer. I did mine for about 15 minutes. And when you pull the wax paper off, you should get a nice flat top cookie. So this is my first time trying this. I decided to give it a go and see how it turns out. I think the cookies could have used longer in the freezer because as I began to pull the wax paper off, some of the icing was coming with it. But I had to get going to church, so this is as much time as I had. But I still found that using the wax paper did smooth out the tops a little bit. I'm sure it would have looked even nicer if I had left them in a little bit longer. But I was still pleased with the results, and I smoothed them out after I took the paper off with just a knife to make them look a little bit neater, and then they were ready to go. Next up, we're making pumpkin muffins. I'm using this recipe from All Recipes for perfect pumpkin muffins. Don't they look delicious? And I really did like this recipe, so I would recommend it. I'll link it below. Here are all the ingredients you'll need for this recipe. I have some Pam baking spray, a 15-ounce can of pumpkin, some oil, brown sugar, regular sugar, vanilla extract, cinnamon, pumpkin pie spice, salt, and of course flour, baking soda, and also a little bit of baking powder and 2 eggs, which I forgot to include here. Start by spraying your muffin tin with your nonstick cooking spray. I applied mine very liberally because I didn't want mine to stick, but if you have cupcake liners, you could also use those instead. And I did get a little bit more than 12 good-sized muffins out of this, so you could spray a second muffin tin if you have it. I only have the one. We'll start by mixing our wet ingredients in a separate bowl and then the dry ingredients in another bowl. I'm adding my entire can of pumpkin. And then you'll want to add 3/4 of a cup of oil. The recipe actually calls for melted butter, but again, I didn't have any butter. After my experience with the cookies, I decided just to use the full amount of oil as butter, and that actually worked out really well. Next, I'm adding a 1/4 cup of water and 2 eggs, along with a teaspoon of vanilla extract and 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. I had just enough, so I used the rest of the bag that I had. Give this a really good mix until everything is well incorporated, and then set the wet ingredients aside. Now onto the dry ingredients. You'll need 1 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of white sugar, 2 teaspoons pumpkin pie spice, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. I whisked these together really well, and then when they were well mixed, I added the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients a little bit at a time, mixing well in between to make sure that they were well incorporated until the batter was done. Now just spoon your batter into your muffin tin, about 3/4 of a cup full each. And I had a little bit of batter left after filling these 12 muffin tins. So I was able to scrape this amount of batter together and get about 2.5 more muffins out of this mix. And if you made the muffins a little smaller than I did, then I think you could get a good amount out of this. I saw some people saying they got 24 muffins out of this one recipe on all recipes. Then I put these in the oven to bake at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, I took these out to check them. The tops should feel springy when you touch them, not wet at all. And I also tested them with a little wooden stick in the middle of them, and they were perfectly done. So this was the right amount of time for mine. I put the muffins on a cooling rack to cool and just let them sit out until I was ready to go. So here's how everything turned out. We have our muffins and our cookies. I thought they both turned out well, but the muffins were definitely the most favorite at church. I got a few compliments on those. So I highly recommend the muffin mix. And if you're in the mood for a quick cookie, then definitely go with the Dollar Tree mix. All right, thank you guys so much for joining me for today for this fall baking vlog. I had a lot of fun. Next time, I think I would add more oil to those pumpkin cookies or just use the butter because they are dry. Hopefully the frosting will kind of make up for that. It would have been better if I could have left them in the freezer a little bit longer for the icing to harden, but I got to get going and I'm bringing these to our church service tonight, so it needed to be done. And I haven't tasted the pumpkin muffins yet, but I think they will be very good. They seem to be very moist. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you all in my next video. Take care and sending you lots of love. Bye.